Hey heroes, and welcome to another entertaining episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. The Circus of Crime, as one might intuit from the name, is a group of criminals who guise themselves as a traveling circus to victimize the places and people they visit. There have been examples of this kind of scheme dating back at least as far as the 1870s, in which a circus owner named Saywer traveled to the American frontier and drew entire towns to his big top. This left the town itself relatively unguarded, allowing he and his performers to study the area and carry out bank robberies between acts. Sawyer's Circus of Crime was ultimately exposed by the gunslinging outlaw known as Kid Colt, but his would not be the last. The modern-day Circus of Crime can trace its origins back to a small traveling circus from Austria that was run for generations by the Tiboldt family. In the 1930s, the ringmaster and manager of the circus, Fritz Tiboldt, got involved with the German Nazi Party. In 1941, during the Second World War, Tiboldt's circus was sent to the United States, where he gave performances in major American cities, while Nazi sympathizers in his employ carried out political assassinations. Members of this sinister troupe included Durko the Clown, Omir the Snake Charmer, Rawal the Elephant Trainer, Zandow the Strongman, Spike the Roustabout, as well as a trio of trapeze artists and sideshow performers like Tommy Thumb and the Missing Link. However, Fritz Tiboldt, the so-called Ringmaster of Death, was ultimately defeated by Captain America and deported back to Austria. Of course, Hitler employed a number of other agents during the war, but perhaps the most notorious among them was a masked madman known as the Red Skull. He had a number of schemes, one of which involved a hypnotic device he'd developed, the Nullatron. In early 1942, the Skull used this machine to mesmerize Captain America and several of his allies. However, Cap's young partner Bucky Barnes assembled a legion of other heroes to oppose this scheme, and in the end the Nullatron was destroyed, freeing the hypnotized heroes. Meanwhile, Fritz Tiboldt regretted his crimes and by one account joined a German resistance with his wife Lola, at some point acquiring the original plans for the Red Skull's Nullatron. After the war ended, the Tiboldts testified against Nazi war criminals before returning to operate their circus in both the United States and Europe. Meanwhile, Fritz and Lola had a young son, Maynard, who they raised to become the new Ringmaster. However, some years later, both Fritz and Lola Tiboldt were murdered by escaped Nazi fugitives in retaliation for their post-war testimony. Hoping to begin anew and continue his family tradition, Maynard Tiboldt moved to the United States and founded the Tiboldt Carnival of Wonder. He was joined in this endeavor by several performers from across Europe, and over time he recruited a number of Americans to his side as well. From Stockholm, Sweden, there was Bruce Olofsson, aka Bruto, a 6'4" strong man with impressive biceps. From Madrid, Spain, we have Tomas Ramirez, a skilled fire eater. From Milan, Italy, the great Gambonos, Ernesto and Luigi, identical twin brothers with a talent for aerial acrobatics and trapeze artistry. From Darlington, South Carolina, he recruited Zelda Dubois, aka Princess Python, a woman with an uncanny ability to train and command giant snakes. And from Burbank, California, there was Jack Pulver, the Human Cannonball, an acrobat who wore a protective helmet and launched himself out of a cannon. Others that Tiboldt recruited early on included Harvey Schlemmerman, aka Chandu the Mystic, a stage magician who used actual sorcery in his performances, and Irene Adler, aka Destiny, a mutant with the power to see the future. However, Tiboldt never suspected that either of those individuals possessed legitimate superhuman powers, and both eventually quit. There was also an incident in which Tiboldt witnessed the Native American mutant John Proudstar wrestle an escaped tiger long enough for the trainer to tranquilize it. Tiboldt attempted to recruit him as well, but was unsuccessful, and Proudstar later went on to become the X-Man Thunderbird. Hoping to expand his small carnival into a full-fledged circus, Tiboldt briefly partnered with the Carson Carnival of Traveling Wonders, the carnival in which Clint Barton performed as Hawkeye the Marksman. After amassing enough capital, Maynard Tiboldt parted ways with Carson and attempted to run his circus alone, but found himself unable to compete with larger, more commercial enterprises. Unwilling to abandon the circus life he was raised in, Tiboldt hit upon an idea when he remembered the plans for the Red Skull's Nullatron. With his own aptitude for electronics and the benefit of modern technology, he created a more portable version of the Nullatron, a hypno-disc that he could place on his hat. His circus then traveled the country, visiting various small American towns and drawing crowds to their big top, after which the ringmaster would mesmerize the audience while his performers robbed them blind. Furthermore, the effects of the hypnosis generally lasted long enough for the performers to break out into the town itself and go on a looting spree, while the ringmaster simply used his Nullatron to immobilize anyone else they encountered. It was an investigation into these towns filled with mesmerized individuals that first put the authorities onto their trail. Meanwhile, although not all of the Ringmaster's original employees were on board with this turn to criminality, Bruto the Strongman, the Flying Gambonos, the Human Cannonball, and Princess Python all stuck with him, becoming his lieutenants and accomplices. During this time, he also recruited a man named Elliot Franklin, better known as Crafty the Clown, not to be confused with Thunderball, who actually has the same real name. The son of Corky the Clown, Crafty came from a long line of clowns, although none of his forefathers ever had much financial success as an entertainer. As a side note, Crafty's father, Corky, notably traveled with the Quentin Carnival, which also featured the stunt riders Barton Blaze and Crash Simpson, which are names that fans of Ghost Rider should recognize. In any event, while Crafty was indeed a talented comedian, juggler, and unicyclist, he also failed to bring in much money and grew increasingly disillusioned as he drifted from one circus to the next. As such, the clown was more than happy to join the Ringmaster's Circus of Crime, finally gaining the riches he dreamed of. Before too long, his skills and quick wit also earned him a spot among Tiboldt's top lieutenants. These, along with dozens of other various performers, workers, and roustabouts, followed the Ringmaster from town to town in what was initially a highly lucrative crime spree. The aforementioned lieutenants tended to be mainstays of the group, but of course there were plenty of other acrobats, clowns, etc. Other performers included Mary Stenson, aka Tina the Fat Lady, who is lighter on her feet than her name would imply. She actually left the circus sometime after their initial crime spree in the hopes of marrying and starting a family, but eventually returned and still shows up among their ranks from time to time. Even more minor performers included Iron Jack Baker, who joined as an additional strongman, Terax the Tamer, an animal trainer whose name is weirdly close to a certain alien warrior, and Toro, who claimed to be the world's most amazing animal trainer, and the Professor, who was the Circus of Crime's resident makeup artist. Throughout the Marvel Age, the Circus of Crime has continued to operate by performing under different names, such as the Ringmaster Circus, Circus Romeo, and the McFadden Brothers. However, their first real encounter with the superhuman came when one of their shows was attended by Rick Jones. At the time, Rick was mentally connected to the Incredible Hulk, and so even as the Ringmaster began to mesmerize him, Jones called out to the Green Goliath for help. However, their mental connection also meant that while Rick was under the effects of hypnosis, the Hulk was left vulnerable as well. The Ringmaster and his circus absconded with the Hulk, intending on turning him into a startling new feature, but by this point the FBI had found and questioned his previous victims and were hot on his trail. When the agents confronted Tiboldt with the recovered Rick Jones, the Hulk was snapped out of his hypnosis as well and went on a rampage. However, Rick ultimately stopped the Hulk from seriously injuring the Ringmaster. The FBI attempted to shut them down, but Tiboldt and his lieutenants managed to escape from custody and subsequently hid among the employees of the more legitimate Keebler Circus. Ironically, the Hulk also took refuge here for a time, passing himself off as a superhuman robot called Meccano, until he was found and confronted by other heroes, ultimately leading to the foundation of the Avengers. In any event, after avoiding any serious jail time, Tiboldt and his circus of crime resurfaced in New York, even bigger and bolder than before. To ensure big crowds, they falsely advertised that Spider-Man would appear and that all proceeds would go to charity. Now, Tiboldt was shocked when the wall-crawling hero actually did make an appearance, but he attempted to seize on this opportunity by hypnotizing him along with the rest of the audience. Unfortunately for the Ringmaster, one Matthew Murdock just so happened to be attending the show, and, unaffected by the hypnodisc, changed to his costumed identity of Daredevil and rescued Spider-Man, ultimately resulting in the Ringmaster's defeat. After that failure, Princess Python and the other lieutenants abandoned the Ringmaster, instead deciding to use their talents to embark on a more straightforward criminal career as the Masters of Menace. They appointed the Crafty Clown their new leader. However, their theft of valuable paintings from a New York art gallery once again drew the attention of Spider-Man. During that battle, the Ringmaster attempted to steal the stolen art pieces for himself, but he was caught by the police and wound up arrested alongside his cohorts once again. After serving a very brief prison sentence, the Ringmaster and his lieutenants reconciled and returned to the circus life, but had a little success. When the Avengers briefly disbanded due to public sentiment, Tiboldt tried to recruit Hawkeye, Quicksilver, and the Scarlet Witch, but they refused to return to crime, and the Ringmaster's attempts to hypnotize them into obedience failed as well. The Ringmaster later had more luck in mesmerizing an unsuspecting Thor, who admittedly at the time had been stripped of his godly powers by Odin, leaving only his physical strength. In any event, the Ringmaster attempted to use Thor's strength in the theft of a golden bull statue, but when the police caught up to them and a gunfight broke out, the loud sounds of battle caused Thor to awaken from his stupor, and the circus of crime slipped away empty-handed. Seeking vengeance, they later infiltrated Avengers Mansion by posing as caterers during the wedding of Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, but ironically, Thor wasn't even there. They nonetheless launched a surprise attack on the ceremony by hiding Princess Python's snake inside the hollow wedding cake, but suffice it to say the Circus of Crime wasn't much of a match for Earth's mightiest heroes. They later had a weightlifter named Mike perform as a strong man while impersonating the mighty Thor, inadvertently drawing the attention of the real Thor's enemy, the rock troll Ulik. Now, the Ringmaster did succeed in mesmerizing Ulik and intended on using him, but before they could do any real harm, the real Thor intervened. There was also an incident in which Princess Python struck out on her own and briefly clashed with Iron Man, but before too long she reunited with her cohorts in the Circus of Crime. Then, as part of their community service for previous crimes, the Ringmaster's Circus were booked to perform in a charity show at Shea Stadium. Around this time, they were joined by a costumed performer named Blackwing, who could psionically control his specially trained bats, which had been mutated to various sizes. As it turns out, however, Blackwing was actually Joseph Manfredi, the son of Silvio Manfredi, aka Silvermane, who is most often associated with the international crime syndicate known as the Magia, but during this time was the head of a faction of Hydra that was secretly based beneath Shea Stadium. and so the elder Manfredi sent his son to join the Circus of Crime solely to keep an eye on the situation and ensure their Hydra base remained undiscovered. In any event, Tiboldt plotted to use this citywide broadcast to hypnotize all of New York, which would allow Blackwing's bats to fly across the city and rob the paralyzed viewers. Remembering that Daredevil was immune to his hypnosis, the Ringmaster sent Princess Python and the Gambonos to find and assassinate the man without fear. However, they ultimately failed, and Daredevil did indeed thwart the Ringmaster's schemes once again. And having accomplished his mission, at least for the moment, Blackwing left the circus and escaped to menace Daredevil again later. Princess Python also briefly left and joined forces with other snake-themed villains as part of the Serpent Squad. However, that team was defeated by Steve Rogers, who at the time was operating as Nomad. After that, she and the other members of the Circus of Crime were freed by a man named Rance Preston, better known as Livewire. Originally from Houston, Texas, he previously worked for a would-be world conqueror from the Microverse known as the Psycho Man, from whom he received his signature weapon, a special electrified lariat. After the Psycho Man was defeated by the Fantastic Four and their allies, Livewire laid low for a time before deciding to join up with the Circus of Crime. The Ringmaster accepted him into the group, and Livewire quickly became a mainstay in their exploits. Not long after that, unaware of their criminal nature, Bill Foster, known at the time as Black Goliath, briefly joined the circus as part of an ill-fated attempt to reconcile with his ex-wife, Claire Temple. As a result of all of this, both he and Claire's ally, Luke Cage, were subsequently mesmerized by the Ringmaster, but Claire ultimately freed Luke from his control with Princess Python's Electro-Prod, and the Circus of Crime were defeated once again. With multiple warrants out for their arrest, the Circus of Crime then fled to Europe, where they recruited Kabir Mahadevu, aka Raja, an elephant trainer from India. While passing through the Balkan nation of Latveria, they encountered Namor the Submariner and the Dark Force-empowered vigilante, the Shroud. Those two convinced the Circus of Crime to smuggle them out of the country, but ultimately wound up staying behind anyway, while the circus left without them. After returning to the United States, the Circus of Crime captured a sea nymph named Miriam, hoping to learn the location of sunken treasure. She was freed by a foursome of sideshow performers, the Circus of Lost Souls, which included Stilts, Blossom, Rex, and Major Minor. While fleeing from the Circus of Crime, this group encountered the Incredible Hulk, who took a liking to Miriam and vice versa. And so while the Ringmaster briefly succeeded in recapturing his lost souls and mesmerizing the Hulk once again, the Jade Giant broke free from his control to save Miriam, subsequently bringing her back to the sea where she belonged. The Ringmaster and several of his lieutenants later performed at a private party hosted by an eccentric socialite named Iris Raritan and proceeded to mesmerize and rob the guests. They also took this opportunity to abduct a particularly peculiar guest, the dimensionally displaced waterfowl Howard the Duck, who they forced to perform as a comedy act until he overpowered them and escaped with some help from Raritan. Later, in a more ambitious scheme, the Ringmaster designed a device called the Psionic Eye, a larger version of his modified Nullatron with which he could presumably mesmerize all of New York without requiring visual contact. However, this attracted the attention of Bill Foster, Bobby Drake, and Ben Grimm, aka Giant Man, Iceman, and The Thing, who quickly thwarted his plans. After that debacle, the Ringmaster's lieutenants abandoned him again, and the crafty clown, Elliot Franklin, attempted to leave his life of crime entirely. He went to stay with his father at the Quentin Carnival for a time, but his former allies tracked him down and left increasingly threatening messages until he finally agreed to return and lead them for a second time. The Circus of Crime attempted to take over control of the Quentin Carnival, however the Fire Eater Tomas Ramirez went too far in attacking the carnival, prompting the clown to oppose him. The whole situation came to a head when the Ghost Rider intervened and ended the conflict by defeating them both. The Ringmaster, meanwhile, attempted to steal an anti-gravity unit from a publicity performance in Texas, alongside a backup circus crew, but this scheme was thwarted by Spider-Man and the Dallas Cowboys. Before too long, he reunited with the rest of the Circus of Crime, and the troupe relocated to Mexico. While there, the Ringmaster briefly gained control over the alchemically animated android, the Dragon Man, but after learning that Bruce Banner was in attendance, Tiboldt couldn't resist mesmerizing him and using the Hulk in his show as well. Suffice it to say that didn't work out for him, as the ensuing fight between the Hulk and the Dragon Man left the big top wrecked. The Circus of Crime subsequently returned to the United States, after which Princess Python got involved with Sidewinder's Serpent Society, which is a topic we've discussed elsewhere on the channel. In any event, she inevitably wound up back with the Circus of Crime. In another incident, the Ringmaster was hired to investigate the sensational She-Hulk and test the limits of her strength. Seizing upon this opportunity to make her part of the show, he had his expert makeup artist, the Professor, disguise her green skin, transforming her into Glamazonia. However, the ones who hired him, a peculiar group known as the Headmen, had their own plans for She-Hulk, and so in the end their leader, a gorilla-bodied scientist named Arthur Nagin, ensured that she was freed from the Ringmaster's influence. Since then, the Circus of Crime has had plenty of other exploits and schemes, but as you can imagine, they've never been particularly successful. There have been other instances in which the Clown took over as leader, and even times when the Ringmaster attempted to go straight, but they always seem to fall back into their old habits and resume their criminal ways. They've had encounters with the Power Pack, the Thunderbolts, Generation X, Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, and even a murderous elf with a gun named Ralph. Years later, there was an incident in which the Clown was transformed into a gamma mutate known as the Griffin. He fought alongside other similarly empowered individuals as a member of the Gamma Corps, however they were all later depowered by an intelligent incarnation of the Hulk known as Doc Green. Human again, the Clown subsequently returned to the Circus of Crime, and while the Ringmaster and his cohorts might not be the most successful or intimidating criminals around, they just can't seem to give up on the circus life, and are astonishingly good at avoiding long prison sentences, so it's safe to say they won't be taking their final bow anytime soon. That, however, is all I have for you for this week, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for any ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here, but Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. That being said, if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments. But that is indeed all I have for you for this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!